Hi guys, I'm Shmi. Hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me today in Zuffenhausen, Germany, the hometown of Porsche. We're actually in the workshop here at the Porsche Museum with quite a cool display of cars behind me. But today is about something I can't quite believe. I can't believe that they are trusting me with an opportunity to drive this. I'm about to be heading out on the road in this, the Porsche 911 GT1 Strassenversion. This is the original prototype in the hands of the Porsche Museum, normally seen on display upstairs. It was the car that, of course, was homologated for the road, approximately 20 of them built for the GT1 racing. It features a 3.2-litre twin turbocharged flat six. There is so much about it to talk about. It's quite literally a unicorn that I never ever thought I might one day drive, but apparently today is the day. So let's have a quick introduction to the 911 GT1 Strassenversion, then grab the keys, start it up, and go out for a drive. I need to stop for a moment and take a very, very deep breath because I'm about to be driving this car, which is virtually priceless, the original prototype of the Porsche 911 GT1 Strassenversion. Strassenversion literally meaning street car, road car, the homologation version of the 911 GT1, which was of course introduced originally as a race car by the GT team in Weissach to take part in the GT1 class racing, meaning they needed to make a run of road cars, and there are approximately 20 or so of them in total. It's quite hard to know the exact number, but this is one of only two from 1996 that feature the 993 headlights. The later cars pretty much all have the 996 lights, and then there's one further car from 98, which is actually upstairs right now, the other car that belongs to Porsche themselves. But this, from the B pillar forwards, is 993. Everything behind is effectively 962, the race car, the mid-engine layout. It has the 3.2-litre twin turbocharged flat six, changing from the air-cooled motor that you had in the GT2 into a water-cooled engine to make more power. 544 horsepower at 7,200 RPM in a car that looks like this. 6-speed manual, rear-driven of course, but take in this elongated bodywork, literally race car for the road. This was an era where there are no compromises. It's very, very, very raw, and that's what today is going to be about experiencing. When we get back, we'll open it all up. The whole rear clam comes up towards the back. The front opens as well. But come round to take a look inside here, where you'll see literally we have the cage, we have bucket seats, not a whole lot else going on because it's about the driving. It's literally one of a few cars that carried an extortionate price tag back in the 90s. These weren't made to be mass-produced. These were made and actually produced and assembled in Weissach, unlike the Carrera GT or 918 Spider, to be the homologation version of the GT1. This is a unicorn that I never thought a day might arrive where I could get behind the wheel, but I think it's time to go and grab the keys, to take a seat, to start this up, and to get ready to go for a drive in the Porsche 911 GT1 Strassenversion. It is time then to pull the GT1 out, so let's start it. It's time then. It's time to try and squeeze in, and what you've got to remember is this was at the time of the CLK GTR, the McLaren F1, but in comparison with the CLK GTR, also produced in these incredibly small numbers, significantly easier to actually enter the 911 GT1. I'm not sure if there is a correct technique, but I'm just falling in and lining myself up. Got a little bit of adjustment with the seat, but this is, gosh, that feel. It's so mechanical. We've not even moved anywhere yet. Fly off handbrake, or normal handbrake I should say, but on the left side. Okay, let me get comfortable for a minute, and then it's going to be time to drive. This view is, this is ridiculous. I can't believe this is about to happen. We've got a normal 3-point seat belt. Click it in, engine is running away. Okay, it's going to be time to go. Handbrake off. into first gear. Let's pull away in the 911 GT1. I suppose technically I can now say I've driven one. This is absurd. This is absolutely absurd. How am I driving this? How am I driving this car right now as we head out from the Porsche Museum? Obviously, it drives in many ways like a 993, just an even more powerful, even crazier one. As we go past the front of the Porsche Museum, if I was here right now and I saw this driving out, I don't even know what I would be thinking. As I just try and learn how the air conditioning controls work in here, play with all the settings, and switches, and what we have. There's a lot of gearbox noise. I love seeing the way the shifter is moving things around, a whole host of buttons and switch gear that I need to learn and understand. AC is actually working pretty nicely, has to be said. It's blowing a lot of air out. Right, we're heading out onto the road then. Carefully does it. Cameras come out naturally. This is the big brother of the Carrera GT, of the 918 Spider. I mean, there's the 959 in there somewhere as well. I don't know what to say. This is a 911 GT1 Strassenversion. Carefully does it. Don't want the embarrassment of stalling as we drive out from Zuffenhausen, past the plant where the two-door cars are assembled. There's a lot of gearbox noise in here, in a very good, very raw way, but a ton of it. And this is just taking it easy, warming up into things. Red line just shy of 7,500 RPM, 544 horsepower, 536 brake horsepower. It's a big old number for back at the time. We've got the Cayenne Turbo S in front of us today as the lead car, if you will. I just can't believe Porsche are entrusting me with this. I mean, you can't put a price on this thing. And here I am at the wheel of it. That feel of the shift. Wow, you're aware of those turbos. Very acutely aware of that power building higher through the rev range. Obviously full concentration right now on this. I just want to share the experience with you of what it's like to drive a halo car, a poster car for many, a car that it's an amazing story really that it exists, if I can say. I'm going to head out from Stuttgart, Zuffenhausen here, towards some more open roads. Just an easy, gentle build-up. The noise of the gearbox in here is actually incredible. Just how much whine there is. As straight as it gets. Obviously, this is road version of a performance race car, and even just cruising in fourth gear, it's loud. Loud in a very cool way that obviously most modern cars don't really replicate. Up into fifth gear. Drop it back down. This is silly. This is just the warm-up, but it is silly. I am very conscious as well of how big it is. The mirrors out on the wings make life a little bit challenging, we could say, to precisely position it. It's long, it's wide, it's loud, it's hard to see out. It's not really the point though, is it? I don't think this car was built with creature comforts at the forefront of the mind. Isn't it just amazing that Porsche made something like this back when they did? Absolutely phenomenal that something like this exists. And to drive normally, it's no big deal. It's nice and easy. Plain sailing. Smooth. Too smooth, perhaps you could say. Down to third gear. Oh my gosh. I wonder if many people realise how special this is when it's coming towards them on a road like this, because I suspect most have absolutely no idea. Like, absolutely no idea in the slightest. I mean, it just looks like a race car from the 90s has literally driven out of the race team's workshop onto the public roads. Tell you what, there's a lot of power. The road car is 1150 kilos. 1150 kilos is seriously light. You won't find road cars now at the hypercar level really getting that low. That's yeah, considering the size as well. I mean, this was an era. This was my childhood as well, don't forget. This car launched when I was, well, about 8 or 9 years old. So it's the beginning of what I remember in terms of computer games, remote control cars, and toy cars to push around in the playroom. And I never once in my life thought that maybe the day could arrive that I'm here and I'm actually at the wheel of it. Just learning what it does and how it drives. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Even just driving gently, you have to respect a car like this, especially when you know the significance of the exact one that you're driving. I need to bring this safely back home to the Porsche Museum later on, so we're going to take it easy. We'll hopefully find a little stretch to open it up before too long. We're certainly not going anywhere near the top speed, which is in the region of 308 kilometers per hour, I believe, just over 190 miles per hour. Not today, at least. No VMAX runs on the Autobahn. I'm also very conscious that there's a really long bonnet or hood out in front of me, and at a standstill with the clutch lifted, you have the lightweight flywheel, as we know from Porsche models, which just always sounds so truly epic. It's a really cool feeling. It's a little bit uncomfortable, you could say, with the rattle and the shaking, but it's not about that. That doesn't really matter. And that's not the point of it. The road opens on the throttle. Oh, there are the turbos. They come in and you definitely know about them. I'm actually amazed how much it drives like a 993, or like a Porsche of that generation, you know, 993s, 996s. I don't know why I probably expected otherwise. Obviously there's a different weight balance, but we're not going fast enough to be able to feel all that much of that. I mean purely in terms of your inputs, your connections with the car, the way it feels through the pedals, the steering wheel, the shifter. Those are all in many ways familiar, which is probably not what I expected. The CLK GTR, which I've also been lucky enough to drive, unreal to be able to say that, which was from the same collection that has the other one of these, the other one of the two original 993 look GT1s, the collection one in Bahrain. It's a very different car, the CLK GTR, because you've got paddles and it's so much more compact inside. This feels more like a street car. This feels more like something that's set up to be driven on the road. I'm probably surprised that it's not as crazy scary as I thought it might be. It's a little bit more regular. Bizarre to say that. Bizarre to say that when you're driving in something like this. But that is the impression it gives you. That is the feel it gives you. If you've experienced different Porsches, this isn't like, I'm lost, what on earth am I doing? And that's probably one of the coolest things, to know that this can do crazy performance. You know, if you drove it on track, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, 62 miles an hour was only 3.9 seconds, but 3.9 seconds at the time was obviously blisteringly fast, whereas now it's pretty average for a normal new sports car, we could say. But that's not what it was about, right? That wasn't the objective of this, ever. This was to produce a homologation special of the GT1 road car, race car, as a road car. Oh, this is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. What a bonkers world. What a bonkers world. Just feeding in the power, taking it safely and sensibly. Yeah, I mean, this must be the most valuable car I've ever driven. And I've driven some very valuable classics, super limited hypercars. And now the 911 GT1, the prototype. I'm just beaming from ear to ear, non-stop. We're heading back towards Stuttgart now, it looks. My cheeks are starting to ache from the constant smile that I have at the wheel of this. Like, genuinely. I'm not going to stop smiling though. Every second I'm sat here is a good second, that's for sure. We are returning back to Porsche Heartland, back to the Porsche Museum, which is a fabulous facility. If you've never been to visit it and you find yourself in this area, it is an absolute must. The history, the heritage, the cars that are present. I just can't get my head over this. Back in regular traffic in Zuffenhausen, the Porsche monument in front, driving underneath the bridge where every single two-door car goes from the paint shop across to the assembly hall over the road, with the Porsche Museum in front of us as well, ready to go and park it back up. And we come back then, pulling back in, very mindful of the curbs around me here, ready to park the GT1 back up, wondering if Porsche fans around have any idea what this is that's being driven past them. Around we go. It's actually surprisingly easy even for the maneuvering here. Mind-blowing. I can't explain this. There's so much more we need to talk about with the car, but I can't explain the whole craziness of it. Just park it up here. I've just driven a 911 GT1. Oh my gosh. That was awesome. That was so awesome. Now there's no good way to step out of here, but peace and quiet. You can slide the seat forwards and backwards, so shuffle that backwards a moment, and then swivel and climb through the scaffolding. Trust me, compared to a CLK GTR, that's easy. Look at it. Look at it. It's so low and long and wide, and I definitely need a couple of minutes to take in what has just happened. The car is back inside the workshop, but there's still so much more to show you about this, which I've certainly never seen, and I imagine you haven't either, because it's not all that frequently you get to be this up close and personal with a 911 GT1. And those are, for example, opening up the front, because of course that's where you fill it. The fuel tank is in the front of the car. Opening the entire rear clam, to show you how to do that, there's a bit of a process to then see the engine. But also, because this is a GT class race car, GT1, at the time regulations basically stipulated that you had to be able to take some luggage with you, a Grand Tourer, a road car of course. So there's actually a suitcase space within this car, which you won't be expecting. It's not up front, given that the engine is in the back. It is in fact back here, and it's actually under this panel. It's quite manual, should we say. A little bit of a tool, i.e. a screwdriver, to release these. Just open up each of these on either side, and then this whole panel will literally lift up, and underneath is your suitcase, your luggage space. It gets very hot in there, being right beside the engine. I never knew that was on a GT1. I'd never seen that before. So the more you know. I'm just going to pop this back into position so that it stays in place for us. But I did know from, for example, recently filming with a Ford GT40, how it has luggage space as well under its rear clamshell. The other thing I'd like to show you though is the entirety of this rear section. And there's, again, a bit of a system for this with a tool that is nicely currently attached to the scaffolding here. Another tool, because this goes in here, and basically you start unscrewing it. We'll hear in a moment that it will unlatch on this side. Wait for it. There we go. That side is unlatched. Go around to the other side to do exactly the same. And then the whole of this panel is going to pivot from the back, akin to how Pagani, for example, do it now. So let me just get this done on this side. And obviously everything's quite hot, having just been out for a drive. But we'll get this undone. Wait for it. There we go. Got the noise. And then the way you do this is the whole thing slides backwards. So for example, pull it from the wing here. There we go. And then pivots up to reveal the engine back there. The 3.2 litre twin turbocharged flat six of the Porsche 911 GT1. Obviously the airbox from the snorkel coming over the top, the suspension mounts that you can see within, a lot of empty space actually back here, particularly behind the wheels, going straight through the bodywork. I mean, it's a race car, right? Literally, through and through. Almost amazing by its simplicity back here, and perhaps expecting it to be even crazier with even more going on. There is a support strut, which I can just pull out. Nope, I'm not going to try and do that because it's very, very hot. That was a bad idea. Let me pop this back down for the moment, which you literally do by dropping it there and then sliding it back in like that. And then of course you do it all back up, but we're going to get to that in a moment, because around this side I want to show you how to open the front. Now there's actually a puller just inside on the dashboard here, which you can pull there and then lift this up if I can get it. There we go. And this is where you have, of course, your battery, radiators, and your fuel filler cap over on this side. So pop down the strut. Obviously this is the prototype, so there are things about this that are slightly different to the other cars, including, I think, the way this releases and the way it sits. But inside a 911 GT1, it reminds me in some ways of the Ford GT and the way Ford took, or Multimatic took, as their approach to making the new car. But that is really quite interesting, the way you close this, drop it into place, just like that. Simple. Right, let me bolt this back up and make sure the rear clam is closed properly before I forget. Well, that is all sealed in. Give the doors a proper close, because this car is different again by not having the sliding windows. All of the main production cars have windows that you can open. On this car, they are completely fixed. I'm gonna give it a thorough shut. But that's been a fascinating drive, in part because I expected it to be more of a challenge to actually drive, but in part also because I don't think it's quite hit me yet that I've really just driven this. Like, that doesn't make any sense. This is not a car that I ever had on my radar to one day drive. There are some really unusual things. I mean, it's still distinctly 911 from the front, right? You look at that front end and you know that's a Porsche 911. But then you start to see the side profile, and in some ways you see a bit of Carrera GT in here. Of course, the Carrera GT came less than a decade after this car, but these shapes and the styling around this area. The mirrors, completely unusual, sitting right out on the wings like this, over the wheels, give you a bit of a sense of where the front of the car is. But again, even the shapes here, the carbon you can see around the windscreen, this is all slightly different on the later cars as well. Obviously lightweight bodywork, lightweight everything wherever they could possibly do it, and an enormous wing at the back, a full-on picnic table, quite flat, just the right height. Feels like you could eat your dinner right off the back of that. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, look at the rear. This is one of the things I've always quite liked, how you have literally the normal Porsche taillights and shape wrapped in within this even wider bodywork, you know, within all of this extra added on parts of the body and the design. To come up with the idea for this, to execute this, is the strangest thing, the craziest thing. Like, how did this come to be? How did this become a car to get made? I mean, obviously, to race in GT1, it had to happen. It had to be converted and homologated. But here it is. This is one of 20-odd of these in the entire world, most of which will never get driven anywhere, will never move, of course, because they've become exceptionally valuable. We're talking 10 million plus whatever currency you want to be talking about. And this being the prototype and the Porsche factory, Porsche Museum's very own car, is just the absolute, like, top craziness of everything to do with this. So what an unbelievable experience. What an opportunity to come today, to take this out for a drive, to get behind the wheel of this thing. I never thought that might happen, and it's going to take me a while to get my head around the fact that it actually has, that it's actually a car I've now driven. Wow. Thank you again to Benny and the team here at the Porsche Museum for this out of this world opportunity and experience, and thank you as always to you guys. Without you it wouldn't be possible, and I hope you've enjoyed getting a bit of a sense of what this car is all about, something you don't see too much of now. It was on the market, it was in the world before the days of social media and these kind of videos, so hopefully this has been a bit of a taster for you of what it's like to experience driving a 911 GT1 Strassenversion for the first time. That's it for now though. Thanks again to everyone involved. Thank you to you guys, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers.